pictures. Again, this is an area that people have often seen it. I want to mention something that's pretty important over here. That is the dialysis center. And obviously there's no entrance over here. You can't drive up to it, but there is, a patient actually came down and spoke with us a little bit ago, and he said there is another way over there, but ended up telling me that in years past,
still without power. As you can imagine, the conditions aren't great
so that's
for
definitely
getting
a
the power
concern
up and
for
running.
patients who need to
We
get
also
there. Hopefully
earlier
they can
today
get this
spoke
squared
with our
away by
Mola
Monday, but
Lindy, who has the
there's no
latest
telling
on
as to how much
Florence.
higher this is going to come, how much if it goes into this mound of dirt, that's just going to create such a mess and be very difficult to clean up. We'll keep you updated as
Totally different
to how,
scene here in Wilmington than it was
flooding
just
is going
24
here
hours
on
ago.
Furacão.
As you can
That
probably
is
tell, the
latest
wind
here
has
from
died down
Southeast
considerably.
Barbara?
We are still seeing a bit of the lingering effects of Florence.
Joel Brown is over at the big board.
Really,
He
at this
has more
point here, in
details
terms of
about
the
the
wind and
rivers
the
that are at
heavy
risk
rains
right
that we
now,
saw
Joel.
yesterday.
Yeah, John, I know you guys have been talking about it. We've got that mandatory evacuation order in place right now for anyone living within a 1 mile radius of the Cape Fear and Little Rivers. So we put together this map to show you the rivers at risk in our viewing area. We're going to go through these things one by one. Let's start with the Cape Fear River here. Runs down from Lillington into Harnett County, through Fayetteville, Cumberland County, down into Bladen County. The Cape
North Carolina. And of course, looking forward now and for the next couple of days, for the next few hours and next few days, obviously the situation is the potential for increased flooding. We have seen flooding already all over the state of North Carolina. It's moving into South Carolina now. Towns, cities, neighborhoods, streets, all taken over, undertaken by rising waters. There have been hundreds of people who have been rescued by swift boat and the like. And so the situation continues. Again, while the wind speed continues to die down, the threat of potential floods remains in both North and South Carolina. Paula?
Mola, as you've been driving around, driving to your live shots, what have you seen in terms of preparations for any potential inland flooding?
Yeah, well, a lot of people have been taking preparations in terms of protecting their properties. You know, the obvious stuff that we see with these sort of situations in terms of sandbagging, in terms of boarding up homes, that sort of stuff. All of that, pretty much every house that you see when you drive around here has, at least in the Wrightsville Beach, Wilmington area, these folks have taken these precautions. As you know, these communities are no strangers to what to do when a hurricane is approaching. They deal with hurricanes every single year, and they pretty much know the routine. This one felt a little bit different to the southeastern North Carolina community here around the Wilmington, Wrightsville Beach area, where the storm was initially anticipated to make impact, and it did make landfall. While they are used to it, you know, the sentiment in the days leading up to the storm was this one feels a little different. And so we saw authorities, we saw first responders, emergency officials, you know, from the governor and the president down to local officials, down to everyday, you know, your average citizen. People were taking this a little more seriously, and so we saw the mobilization efforts. We saw, you know, everything from the National Guard being activated to communities, you know, getting sandbags out, and of course the evacuation efforts. Those were key in a lot of these vulnerable coastal communities because people felt like this one was different. That the flooding was going to be potentially catastrophic, as advertised, if you will. The evacuations, for the most part, by and large, were heeded. And so in terms of preparation, that was probably the biggest preparation that folks took upon themselves, was to heed the advice and the warnings of government officials and emergency officials, and to basically get out of town and seek safer ground. Now, obviously, the threat continues as the storm moves inland. A lot of these folks have left the coast and gone inland, and now they may find themselves in a tough spot inland as it continues to push and to threaten those communities there. Paula?
Well, Mola, you're certainly right. Wilmington is no stranger to these kinds of situations, but it sounds like, based on your reporting there on the ground, that the first responders, that the warnings, it worked this time.
Yeah, it did. There was something about, you know, in speaking to people, again, the common sentiment was this one feels different. Now, whether that was the fact that government officials and emergency officials from the jump were not mincing words about the possibilities of this storm. Everything from this could be potentially life-threatening, this could be catastrophic. Florence is a monster. Whether that was a part of the reason why they really took it so seriously, or just the sheer images. Remember when Florence was sort of hovering over the Atlantic, moving towards the Carolina coast? It looked like a monster. Those images were impressive, to say the least. So that may have put the fear in people, as well as perhaps some of the recent storms that we've seen over the last year, from Harvey to Maria, and the impact that those have had. Perhaps those images are still fresh with people, but there was something that folks really took seriously with this one, and mobilized and tried to get out of harm's way.
Well, thank you so much for that report. We also want to take you now to Columbia, South Carolina. Governor Henry McMaster, you see there the tall gentleman to the man speaking at the podium right now. They're all giving an update, local officials and state officials, on Tropical Storm Florence. Let's listen in.
So far is 31 inches in Oriental, which is in Pamlico County. So there's a tremendous amount of rainfall. For us, by no means is the risk for flash flooding over. In fact, additional rainfall amounts of 8 to 12 inches are expected from Rock Hill to Florence to Myrtle Beach and areas northeast of there, with an additional 2 to 6 inches expected farther southwest into the I-26 corridor. The potential for heavy rains will continue through tomorrow and into the first part of the upcoming week. There is still the potential for deadly flash flooding, again in parts of the Grand Strand, PD, Midlands, and the upstate, where flash flood watches remain in effect. We expect major flooding over the next several days in the PD River Basin that includes the Great PD, Little PD, Lumber, Waccamaw, and Lynch's rivers due to rainfall occurring in the North Carolina watersheds. Residents are advised to take preparedness actions now and stay connected to local emergency management for evacuation guidance. We are continuing to monitor rainfall amounts across the state to assess additional flooding impacts. Thank you.
Thank you, John. And ladies and gentlemen, as you know from the beginning, since we've been watching for this storm and hurricane, it has been most unpredictable. Well, what has been predictable and steady is our concern about the heavy rain and the flooding, and that is on course for what we have been anticipating all along. We have, this morning, issued at 11 o'clock, removed the evacuation order for the evacuation zones in Charleston County, Berkeley County, Dorchester County, and for Edisto Beach, which had continued under the zone evacuation in Colleton County. That is, they came out from under the evacuation order at noon today, Charleston, Berkeley, Dorchester, and Edisto Beach. That means that the evacuation order is still in effect for evacuation zones in two counties only. That is Horry County, the zones there, and Georgetown County, the zones there. The school closures and the state office closures are still in effect in Horry County and Georgetown County. That is the entire county. Again, all school closures except those in Horry County and Georgetown County.
Quem tá fazendo barulho, eu tô subindo Faz até mais barulho, mas claro que vai ser minoria. Mas eu acho que são pontos positivos e negativos das duas equipes, mas sem dúvida nenhuma, as duas vivem um grande momento na competição. E é uma rodada, né, Pisato, cheia de clássicos, né, pelo Brasil. Vamos acompanhar a rodada, portanto.
All state offices previously closed will be open for business on Monday. So I'll say again, the evacuation order is still in effect for the evacuation zones, all of them, in Horry County and Georgetown County.